Hey guys, welcome back. I've got an awesome guest today. We're actually doing round two. We had some technical difficulties on the first time, but I've got Damon Nichols. He's actually the author of Breakout Blueprint, and he's a self-storage developer, but much deeper than that. Okay. I would say Damon has probably one of the most empowering and interesting stories of like bottom to the top that I've heard in a long time. And I wanted to get him on here because he's not only an ex-con felon, past felon, of course. I don't know how that technically label goes, recovered meth addict. He's also the lead on a TV series called Built to Store. And so it's kind of like been high, rock bottom, and way up high again. Damon, thank you for so much for doing this interview with me. I think people are going to get a lot of value out of it, and I hope they walk away seeing that anything is absolutely possible if you put your mind to it and you go out there and you control what your mind is, what's going on in your mind. So, thanks again for being on. And you're based in Colorado,
In
correct?
Colorado, yes. Thanks
Awesome.
for having me, man. It's good to be here and be able to do this again. I know I'm on the road a lot, so trying to do this in a hotel is just a little different. So,
Tricky.
yeah, great to be here. And it's all about mindset. Getting into a different mindset and knowing that, so like you said, label of felony, ex-con. I don't carry that anymore. That was who I
Yeah.
was, and becoming able to shed that identity and rewrite your story and become a different person, and that's what my story's about.
That's what blew me away so much. It's like, let's just start out deep. How many times have we seen someone, and I'm just being really, really honest here, probably too honest. How many times have we seen somebody on the side of the road? They're homeless. You feel for them, but you're like, man, I don't think that person's ever going to get out of that situation. You could tell they're on drugs, whatever. And it's like you feel for them, but you also go, I don't think that person's ever going to bounce back. And you're proof
Yeah,
it's possible. So,
yeah.
can we kind of jump back and talk about, you know, give us an idea of your story, Damon, like from start to finish, next few minutes.
Okay, yeah. So I was born and raised in Rocky Ford, Colorado. I grew up on a farm, super poor. We didn't have much money. It was a sheep farmer, and my mom left when I was 5 years old. Went through a pretty nasty divorce, and went with her. She took us, and in 9 months we kind of ran from my dad, and then he took us back. We went back on the farm. So it was a kind of a pretty traumatic event that happened in my life when I was around 5 years old for me and my brother both. But then we went back to this farm and we stayed there, and we raised animals, and it was just me and my brother and my dad. So I grew up having to take care of my little brother, but also take care of a bunch of animals. I had all this responsibility. And as I got older, I developed some resentment. I became angry. The person that I wanted and needed the most was not in my life. And it sent me down this road of, I spiraled into trouble, drugs, and just a world of anarchy. And so when I was like 12 or 13, I finally got to go see my mom. And then it was just all, I got into drugs, and she was living a reckless lifestyle, and that just fed the fire. And by the time I was 18 years old, I had gotten so bad, strung out on cocaine. I had broken a couple needles off of my arm. I ended up going into rehab. Got clean for a little while, and then I ended up going to prison when I was 21 years old. I spent a few years in there, got out, got clean for a while, started a business. The business failed. I went back to doing what I knew was easy, and was selling drugs, and then I got deep into that, and then I got into the meth game and went down that road for a while. The woman that I was with, we had a couple kids together. I ended up getting in a car accident. She got killed. Both my boys were injured. And then, another back for 8 year treatments. I went to 8 years for community corrections. I couldn't finish that. And just, I got out for a little while on non-res and went back for hot UAs. And then the alternative was to go to a 2 year treatment center. So I went there for a couple years. Got out of that, was clean for a while. I met the woman that I'm with now, my wife. I met her in there, and we got together after the program. We ended up having another boy. I had another boy in between that time too, when I was deep in my addiction. Got clean for a while, and just had the same kind of job, just working for a few bucks an hour, doing the same thing, and then feeding the addiction. And in 2014, I ended up picking up a whole bunch more felonies, and that was kind of where it all kind of came crashing down. That was the like the third or fourth cycle I'd hit rock bottom, and I was 45 years old at that time.
Wow.
And I knew that I didn't like anything about my life. I hated everything that I'd done, and I needed to become a completely different person. And so from that point, I made that change. I got clean. It's been going on 10 years now. I've been clean and sober. But through that, I was able to learn how to do real estate. I got into that. I no longer wanted to work for anybody. I no longer wanted to be in that, live that lifestyle at all. I wanted to get as far away from that life as I could. So, like I said, I did really well in real estate. I got into tax liens, bought and had a restaurant for a while, and now I own this storage company. We travel all across the country and build storage facilities. So, kind of in a nutshell, I mean, there's a lot more to it there, but just to kind of give you the shortened version of where I came from to become successful right now. Yeah. But I went through that
Wild,
cycle
wild
many times.
ride.
Yeah, yeah. And it took a completely different change of mindset and living an intentional life.
That's that's where I want to go with this. All
Yeah.
right. You hit rock bottom number 4, right? You said this is like the fourth time you hit rock bottom and you're just like, "You know what? I'm done with it. I'm done with the whole lifestyle. I want to be the opposite of what I am now." Like, what does it take? Like, what did you have to do to completely turn the opposite way from what you were before to what you are now?
Well, it was all about choice and making those hard choices. I make a joke about eating mustard sliders. And there was a point in my life where it was the middle of the winter. I was living in my truck and I only had a little bit of, I had like $10 to my name. And I had to make the choice of, I had just came out of my addiction. I was maybe a month or two clean. And my choice was either go to somebody's house that I knew that was warm and had food, but everybody that I knew at that time was doing drugs. So that was the choice of either going there or me going to King Supers and buying 50-cent slider bread and getting mustard and condiments off the racks. So that's what I say. I ate mustard sliders, and I slept in my truck. So that was my choice to eat that and put $8 worth of gas in my truck so that I could stay warm and not freeze in the King Supers parking lot or go. But those are like defining moments in my life where I made that choice not to go to where I knew there was safety and security and warmth and food, but it really wasn't safe for me because it would have ended my life.
So it's really relationships. I mean, you had to completely distance yourself from the relationships that you knew and the people you loved because you knew if you got around those people again,
Yeah.
it would suck you right back into that lifestyle and you just can't do it. You can't, I mean,
Yeah.
you know, people with addictions, which I have not had, but I'm familiar with how that works. Like it's very difficult to, withstand the temptation. And so you're better off just completely being away from it. It's like,
Yeah.
and
Some of
that's
the Yeah, those were some of the hardest choices that I had to make, but every time I made that choice to not go back, I had to remove everybody from my life. I removed every last person, every last place. I moved away from there, and I quit. I quit all of it.
man. So when you're making that choice, you've decided that you're not going to see anybody that you know anymore. You're going to completely do everything differently. How do you handle like touching base with family or anyone that was, I mean, how did you handle that? You just sent them to voicemail, you got a different phone number and just completely
Well,
avoided them?
so I don't have very much family. I only have, pretty much family on my dad's side. My mom, but I was ashamed of what I did,
Yeah.
and it was hard for me to reach out to them. I didn't want them to know, how bad my situation was. So my family was the only people they were really supporting me. My brother has like been one of my biggest supporters through all of it. He's always been there for me and had my back. Lex, I love him. He's everything to me, and my dad. So my family is very, very small. So they were the only ones that were there, but it was for me to reach out to them. It was hard, but slowly I started, you know, letting them know what was going on and talking to them. And as I started cleaning my life up, I knew that I had to have that positive influence, and I knew that they loved me, and not hiding that from them anymore.
So you
So it
built
was
a
all,
support, you got
yeah,
back with the support group, essentially your
yeah,
family, the people that supported you. So
yeah,
get away from all the people that are bringing you back into the lifestyle you're trying to avoid, and then over time, be transparent, be honest, connect in with the people who love you and support you and can help you stay clean and go in the direction that you're trying to go.
yeah. So that was probably my biggest thing right there.
What tell me about when you made the shift from being an employee. I assume you didn't just, drop all the drugs, drop all that stuff, and then just start a business. Tell me about that transition a little bit, because I think a lot of people are in a lifestyle that, whether it's extreme like that or whether it's just they work a 9 to 5 that they absolutely hate and that owns them. Tell us a little bit about that transition from working for someone else to then starting your own business.
Yeah. So for me, I've always had that kind of entrepreneurial spirit, and I had a business when I was younger. Like I said, when I was got out of prison, I had a business. It failed, but I hadn't done enough work on myself to really be able to take failure. And I know
Yeah,
as an entrepreneur, like failure is what makes us different, and we learn from our failure, and the bigger we go, the bigger we fail sometimes, and we just learn from it, and we go on. But I worked for people, even though as I was younger, I had my own businesses. I worked for people, after I got out, went through the halfway houses or treatment centers or whatever. I had these jobs, and that's basically what I picked up a job coming out of the drug treatment center, and I worked there for years, and I was in the skilled trades, electrical engineering and a technician. And then I just kind of went from one to the next, and was getting like better jobs that paid a little bit more money.
just kind of
But
working your way up.
yeah, I worked my way up. But when I lost everything, I couldn't hold a regular job because I had to go to court constantly, and all of the stuff that you can't do, as and hold a job and go to court and do that. And nobody really, it was hard for people to want to hire me as a
Sure.
felon. But I found a guy that hired me. I worked for him for a while, and then I went to go get a senior PLC electrical technician job at a meat plant, and it paid, I don't know, like $45 an hour, which at the time I thought it was good. But because of my record, the day I was supposed to start, they called me and told me, "Oh, you can't hire you because you have felonies." So I was like, I don't, I didn't know what I was going to do. I was devastated because I thought that was like the ultimate job. But that was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. One of the best things. What I did there is I got on. I started delivering pizzas for Domino's Pizza. So I was delivering pizzas, and I got really good at that, and I made money. And then I started, looking for on Craigslist, trying to pick up little part-time jobs, doing what I could, handyman stuff. And kind of from there, I started doing enough to where I didn't have to go back to work for somebody. But then I found some things that were kind of magical, and that's part of what I offer. I have a course that I offer this information in, and it's where I found these lead generation companies that you can sign up and become a member of, and they will sell you leads, quality leads. And if you get hooked up with a really good lead company, a premium lead company, you get premium leads. So that sent me into a completely different level. And from there, I could pick and choose what work I did, and then all of the quality projects started coming on, and then it turned into real estate. It's like, I don't want to just have a handyman company. I want to get into real estate.
So the leads were for a handyman, for you doing work for
Yeah,
people. Interesting. So
yeah.
basically
So
you could be independent and start getting leads for people who are looking for these different odd jobs that needed to be done.
yeah, I have a perfect blueprint on how I did that, and it took me a few years to figure out. Like, I'm willing to show, and just, like, you could do
Yeah.
this in 30 days. And like, I didn't know that you could get, bank funding out there. I didn't know really about creating your own LLC and setting up a bank account and getting a $4, $5, $6,000 credit card. Like, for me at that time, that would have been huge.
Yeah.
But I had to save up, a few $100s here at a time. But I took that money and I got signed up with these premium lead companies, and they would sell me leads specific to what I did. And then I could pick and choose the leads that I wanted, and they were really good leads, and they netted me pretty good profits. And then it got me where I didn't have to go look for more work, because I was working for like big property management companies, doing contract work for them, and it just kind of, but it was all the mindset of,
You
not,
became self-employed, basically.
yeah,
Instead of taking that cushy $45 an hour job, you started basically employing yourself by finding the work using lead gen tools and all these things you're talking
yeah.
about. Which, check out his book, his best-selling book, Breakout Blueprint, guys, because there's some really good stuff in there. So now that you're doing all these kind of different projects, you've got good lead flow or good workflow, so you're paying your bills, you're living pretty good. How does real estate come into play?
So I just decided that, like, I want to get into real estate. I don't know anything about it. I didn't know what a buyer's agent was or seller's agent. I didn't know what any of the terminology was. But I went to an event. It happened here in Colorado. They were advertising on the radio, this flip this house thing. Come, we need a handful of people. We're looking for a handful of people. So I went to one of those. It was a 2-hour deal, and it was a pitch, to do more, which I understood, and I knew that
Yeah.
that's what it was about. But I went ahead and I signed up for it, and that was probably one of the biggest moves that I made in my life. There was, I wrote a check for a few $100 for. I didn't really have the money, but it was all I had. I wrote the check for the event. My wife was a little like, you just spent all her money. What are you doing? And I was like, well, I want to do this. So she believed in me. So I went. Actually, the event came and I missed it. So 6 months later, it came back, and she was like, hey, you signed up for this thing. You need to make sure you follow through on it. So I did. I went. It was a 3-day event, and I had never been to anything like that. I'd never been to a mastermind or a real estate event, but I went with the mindset. It's crazy because people told me, oh, it's a scam. You're wasting your time. You're wasting your money. These things they're a con. It's just a scheme. But I didn't listen to any of the noise. I went there with the intent of, I'm going to learn something, and I'm going to learn about real estate. And I did. And I got so much out of it. I was like, holy crap, this stuff is so valuable. And I took so much away from it. And just that, being in that room with those kinds of people that have that different mindset, because I hadn't been around those kind of people in my life before. There were always people that had that, that mindset of, the victim mindset. But when you have people that are like, well, quit focusing on the money and learn how to put a deal together, because the money will come. And I'm like, oh, that's a mind shift right there that kind of blew my mind.
That's a good tip.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was probably one of the biggest things, the biggest takeaways that I got from that. But then I learned, just like, started learning the terminology and learning the business. And I started learning that, oh gosh, there's all kinds of people out there that have money. So I started going to different auctions, because everybody that goes to an auction is there to buy something, and only one or two people leave with it. Everybody else leaves with their money.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, I started going to real estate auctions. I started going to tax lien auctions. I started going to treasurers auctions. And then I found a couple people in here that were like, yeah, we want to invest in real estate. And I'm like, oh, wow, I can put all these pieces together. I know how to do rehabs. So these are the people that have the money. So let me go out here and find a deal. So I just learned that different set of skills of how to find a deal and put it together and present it, and all of those things. I'm like, okay, how can I learn how to pitch? So like I had to learn all of these little different skills. And once I did that, how can I be the best communicator? How can I, be the best at putting numbers together and going to the bank without any question, or going to somebody without any questions? Because later on I ended up going to the bank, but it was all going to, people at first with, hey, I got this deal. Here's are the numbers. Here's how long it's going to take. Here's how much it costs. And here's how much we're going to make. And here's the whole deal.
You studied up and you learned the skills you needed to be successful.
Yeah.
Guys, take that auction. I just wrote that down actually, because that's a very good place to meet people. You're right. Only a few leave what they came for. The rest all have cash sitting in their pockets waiting to buy something else.
Yeah.
That's a really good idea, actually. And so you became resourceful is really what it is. You went from dependent to resourceful. You were able to, you were studying up. You also got around people who had a different mindset. So you kind of went from the, obviously the victim devastated mindset to getting around people that support you so you can kind of get your groundings. And then you go to the people who have a much bigger mindset about growth and success and entrepreneurial mindset and resourceful mindset, and you adopt that. And then you go out and you start putting all the pieces together. You didn't have to be an expert in every little detail, but you knew the right people with the money. You knew how to do the numbers. You knew how to network with investors and find deals, and you put it all together and start putting those deals together. Tell me about when did you know you were onto something? Like, tell me about that first deal.
So when I went to this event, and I met some people there, specifically this one lady. She was blind, and she had an assistant. She had a bunch of different properties that were about probably 80% done. Some of them they had kind of been, they were at a loss, but they needed the last 15 to 20% of a rehab done so that they could be sold. She had some rental properties, so I offered to help her get those rental properties up and fixed and taken care of, and get these properties ready to sell and get them on the market. So as I did that, I developed a relationship with her, and I made a little bit of money as I was doing that. And then the conversations got more of, hey, if I find a deal, would you want to invest in it? And she was like, for sure, yeah. So I built some trust with her, and then I started going out and looking, and I went to Colorado Springs because I knew that market was a little bit, it wasn't as competitive as Denver. I didn't know much because I'm new into this, but I went to Colorado Springs, and I didn't know the first thing. Like I kind of knew about finding properties, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to go street to street. My wife gave me some really good ideas. So we started finding mailmen that were on their route, and we would ask them, hey, what house do you not deliver to? And they were willing to show me, hey, I don't deliver here, I don't deliver here, and I don't deliver here. There's nobody living in these houses. So that was like something that I figured out. My wife was like, she figured it out pretty much because she saw the mailman going by and like, hey, why don't we ask him? So I did, and they were more than willing to tell me, yeah, I don't deliver here. So I wrote down these addresses, and I started looking at these properties like, yeah, they're vacant. So I started researching these properties, but we found one just driving by, and the guy happened to be there, and he wanted, I don't remember exactly how much he wanted, but it's halfway through this rehab. He's like, hey, I'm going to sell it. I've got a couple other properties. And there was like 2 or 3 real estate agents we passed that were coming in too. And then I took my number down, and he gave me the numbers, what he was looking for it. I did a little bit of research. I figured out, well, I could flip this and probably make, $70,000, $80,000. So I called this lady, and I was like, hey, I got this opportunity on a lead. And she's like, well, if you think it's a good deal, then go for it. He called me later on that night, and he was like, hey, I got 3 people interested in this property. I live in Monument, and whoever shows up at my house with a contract first in the morning, I'm gonna sell it to you. So I slept in my truck in a snowstorm in Monument in a McDonald's parking lot so that I could be at his house at 6 o'clock and wrote a contract. And
Like, bro, I will be there before anybody.
yep, because I knew
Whatever
it.
it
I
takes.
knew that this deal was going to work, and I jumped, and it was a lot for me because it was, this was like 200. I think I paid. It was a $210,000 property. We ended up, when it was all done, we got like 340, 350 out of it. But
Jeez.
I made this jump, and I wrote a check for $2,000 earnest money. Is what he wanted,
Yep.
and I'm like, okay, I have like $500 in my bank account. But I wrote the check. It was a Sunday morning. I wrote the check. I had the contract. It was signed. And then so I called my buddy who I knew. I'm like, hey, dude, I just made an investment. I just did this deal. Can you loan me $2,000 to cover my bank account? And he did. He did.
Wow.
He's now my business partner. We've done a lot of deals together, but he gave me the $2,000. So I was there at the bank to put the $2,000 in the bank that morning. I didn't realize that I had a little bit of time because it went through the escrow and closing company and all that stuff. But my check was in there, but I didn't like all of that stuff. I didn't know. I just like, I got to get the money in there when
You
the
didn't
bank
have
opens
it.
up.
You just
I
knew
didn't
you wrote a
have it.
bad check.
Yeah. So I got it, but I also knew that I could figure it out. I put myself in that position to figure it out. Then I called the lady. I was like, hey, I got this contract, and are you're going to jump with me, right? And she did. So she put the money up, and I did the rehab. We did the rehab. We ended up selling it, and we made a pretty good profit. But through that, I learned so much, and I'm like, so that just gave me the confidence to be able to do that. So my first deal was a lot of sleepless
Sketchy.
nights.
Yeah.
It was sketchy, but you know what? I did it, and that's what I had to do. So I'm
That
glad
right
that I did
there,
that.
that
Yeah,
right there is another example of just being resourceful. You weren't going at it blindly, like you knew the numbers. You knew it was a good deal because you'd done your research. I think there's a lot of people out there that they don't do any research and they just
right.
wing stuff. And that's not how you become successful. But you researched it, you understood the numbers, but you
Yeah,
just had so much confidence and you were so bold and resourceful that you just stepped out and did it. Even when you had a few little gaps you had to kind of like jump over, like not having the money for the earnest money check that you just wrote. I mean, that's ballsy, but that's how you win, right? Sometimes you
yeah,
got to step out a little bit and all calculated risks, but you
yeah,
were taking them. And that's the difference between successful people and people who want to be successful. People who just want to be successful, they just talk about it. They research, but they don't have the guts to actually step out and write the offer to go sleep in their car the night before to be the first one there. Like, it's just grit, man. I love it. I love
yeah.
it. So you start doing house flipping. You obviously got the skills of the contractor role, and you've got investors. You've got a partner now. All that stuff. How do you get into self storage development, and then where does the TV show come in?
Okay, yeah. So this Benjamin, he loaned me the money. I did a little rehab on his house. So we go way back. We were already really good friends, and I had done some rehab work on his house. So he already had confidence and faith in me, and he knew that I'd be able to follow through with my deal. So I decided to move down to my hometown and go back to Lahana, Rocky Ford, Colorado, where like I knew people, and I knew that I didn't have to invest as much money, and we did some tax lien stuff, but we started picking up some pretty distressed properties. I mean, like ready to be bulldozed. My first
Yeah.
property was ready to be bulldozed, but we got it for like $10,000, and we had a $12,000 credit card between the two of us, and that's what we did to get started. I did the entire rehab by myself. My wife helped me. She was over there in the winter, helping me with demo and whatever. But I did that in the middle of the winter, and then I got the thing done. The house turned out nice. I put a renter into it, and then it just kind of scaled from there. I was able to go to the bank and get more money and turn other deals. So then just a lot of deals happened. But in that process, I had this old pickup truck that burned up, and one of my old bosses had this old truck that he told me he'd sell me. So I went to go get this truck, and he asked me, "Hey, do you interested in building any storage?" I was like, "Well, I could. I've never done it before, but I could." He was like, "Well, my cousin needs some built." And I'm like, "Yeah, sure. Have him give me a call." I like 5 minutes later left, and this guy calls me. He's like, "Hey, Dave, or he said my cousin said you'd build some storage for me." I was like, "Sure, take a look." So he shows up, and we talk about it, and I meet him over at the place, and we look at it, and I didn't even know. I had no idea what I was doing. Like, well, I'll do it. And I gave him a price. I didn't know what price. I just thought I'll give him a price what I think I could do it for. And then I forgot. So it was like a month and a half before the buildings got there. Then he shows up. I'm like right in the middle of a rehab projects, and he shows up and he was like, "Hey, here's the plans. The buildings are going to be here in a couple of days." Then I was like, "Oh shoot, man. Can you get somebody else to do it?" And he was like, "No, man, like this is all on you." Yeah. I was like, "All right." So I did it. And as I was doing it, like I had no idea that it was going to end up being what it was, because I had people drive by and were like, "Hey, I want some storage. Who do you work for?" I'm like, "Well, I'm just kind of doing this." They wanted it. I'm like, "Well, I don't want to do this. I'm doing houses. I'm doing fix and flips, and I'm trying to pick up some rentals." And people kept calling me, and then finally, I'm like, "All right, I'll go do another one." And I a little bit higher price. So like I didn't make much money on that. So I went and I did another one, and then they referred me to somebody else, and then I did another one. Then I had a guy from out of state hit me up, and I shot him the "I don't want to do it" price, and he was like, "When can you be here?" And I'm like, so then I kind of knew that I was.
I don't want to do it price.
Yeah. And I took a group, some of my rehab guys that I had hired on. I had hired a few guys. We were doing the rehabs. I took those guys, and we went to Idaho, and I think that might have been my third or fourth out of state job. But I took my guys to out of state, and then I realized that, hey, I could probably do this. Then I built a really good relationship with the company and a guy specifically. His name is Steve Palukovich. He's with a Regency Building Outlet. We've worked together over the last probably 5 or 6 years building buildings. But I built a really good relationship with him, and through one of my projects, he was like, "Hey, we want to do a little bit of filming. We want to put some stuff on our website, and we want to put you on our website because you guys are really fast." And so we did that. And then as I started doing this, and then it just became like full time. And I realized I could take these guys all across the country, and I had this niche where nobody else is able to take guys and go build these things in and out. Like we're 4 or 5 buildings. We're there. We build them, and when we leave, you're renting doors.
Jeez.
Yeah. So we just did this last project in Texas. We were there. It was 9 buildings, and we were there 20 days. We put nine buildings up in 20 days. Yeah.
Dude, that's hustle.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like 238 doors.
Dang.
So through this process, I'm like, there's a lot that goes into this. People don't realize all of the logistics of moving guys, Airbnbs, hotels, travel, and then a lot that just goes with putting the buildings up. And there's when you bring construction guys and you take them away from their home, and you take them out on the road 2 or 3 weeks on the road, then you start getting drama, and there's a lot. I was I got to put this on film. So I got a film crew, and we started filming, and we've been filming, and now we're like, okay, let's keep these going, because now I got all these other projects, and I want to be able to show all of the whole start to finish of putting a deal together, finding the land, the investors, building it, and start to finish, and taking this. I'm looking to put out an entire season of 12 episodes.
That's sick. What's the challenges you see working with a gang of really scrappy guys running around the country?
Oh gosh,
examples.
So with most construction workers, they all have addictions. And when you get away from home for 2 or 3 weeks at a time and you start running out of whatever you're addicted to, your work performance either comes to a grinding halt, you become very irritable, and getting along with other people becomes very hard. So that's a huge challenge there. A lot of guys don't have driver's license, so that's a big one. And so when you're taking 2 or 3 vehicles and you got 9, 10 guys out and only 2 or 3 of them have driver's license, there's a lot of stuff that can go wrong, and it has. So uh, those are a couple of the big challenges. Trying to get them to be able to rent or get hotel rooms. If you don't have a driver's license, you don't have a bank card, you don't have a credit card, a debit card, or anything, you can't. So those are kind of some of the challenges.
So you basically catch footage of all this crazy drama while talking technical and kind of showing
Yeah.
what you guys are doing as well.
Yeah. One thing about the guys that I've got going, they've been on the road with me for a long time. They're so when it comes to being out on the job and doing the job, these guys got grit. They're
Yeah.
reliable. They're dependable. They show up every day. They work hard, and they have all of these really good things about them. A lot of things
When they punch out, you so when they punch out, that's when the problems start,
yeah,
basically. Yeah.
yeah. So
It's the
so
after
I have to
hours.
overlook a lot of things, and it's hard because you just taking guys away from their home and being
Yeah.
out and
But you're uniquely positioned to help them and to be able
yeah,
to manage that because you know what it's like to be in that position. And so you probably are either extra tough on them and or have some empathy too. Like you actually understand what they're going through
yeah,
and can probably manage that pretty well. Is so your company is basically developing these self-storage facilities all over the country, and is the what's the I mean, I guess biggest challenge is what, moving the guys around and making sure that they're all able to get into hotel rooms, kind of the logistics of it, or is that the biggest challenge, or what would you
that's
say
one
would
of
be?
the challenges. A lot of some of the other challenges we have is getting all of the if we're doing multiple buildings, big projects. A lot of times the the materials won't show up all on time. If you got like 4 or 5 trucks coming and you have a truckload of doors, it may be one comes one day or two comes one day, and it's like a week later another truck comes. So trying to get equipment on site, and a lot of stuff we do is with a lot of small towns that are kind of a ways from each other, and when you rent a piece of equipment and you only need it for 2 days, and then you find out, oh, this truck's delayed, now it won't be here for a week, so now you got to either keep that equipment for another entire week or send it back and pay all of the extra costs. So then you like those are costs that
You eat, right?
yeah, you got to eat that, and sometimes that can start to stack up. Or weather, you get out there, or we've had times where some materials weren't there, like critical materials. It might have been a box of screws or some door latches or something that is very critical to moving forward. Like it's part 5 in a 15 part step, 15 steps is part 5, and if you don't have that, you can't continue on. If you try to build around that, then you're just shooting yourself in the foot. So we've had that happen. And when you got 10 guys out there, it's $3,000 to $5,000 a day for every day that you're
Jeez,
down. Yeah, so
that
it can
adds
start
up.
to add. Oh yeah, a day here, you make some mistakes on something, and you got 2 3 guys you got to go back and spend a couple hours redoing these mistakes, or something doesn't show up, or just whatever. A day starts to add up, and another day, and pretty soon, you've 15 20,000 dollars off your bottom line, and it.
So
So that's
Damon,
challenges.
you've basically turned a house rehabbing business into a self-storage development business, but it really came from following the demand, right? Because
Yeah,
you wanted to do one thing, but the
yeah.
demand just kept pulling you towards the opportunity. I think a lot of times people get stuck in their ways and they're like, no, this is what I'm going to be successful at. For me, it was apartments. I
Yeah.
thought I was going to be buying, institutional grade apartments. I was chasing apartments for over a year, couldn't find a deal. Mobile home park falls in my lap. I'm like, yeah, what's this? I do that deal. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. I'm on to
Yep.
something. But it took going after that and recognizing the opportunity, because there's opportunities that are placed in our lap all the time. It's just not always the opportunity that we're chasing. And in some cases, you shouldn't chase whatever's on your lap because it's a
Yeah.
distraction. But in some cases, what you're chasing really isn't what you should be going after, and you should be going after what's falling in your lap, because
Yeah.
there's the opportunities are coming to you, which means there's a reason you should be pursuing it. And I think there's a lesson there. There's a fine line between distraction and opportunistic.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you can't tell the difference, you can be
Mm-hmm.
going after every
Well,
opportunity and
yeah.
not good at anything, or you could be going after the wrong opportunity and
Mm-hmm.
not being opportunistic. So it's kind of a,
Yeah.
a balancing act
Well,
there.
I see that shiny object syndrome in different marketing things, different, easy come, quick fix, YouTube this or
Oh yeah.
Instagram this. I see it in building stores, building e-commerce, and I see a lot of people doing that because there was a couple that I looked into, and I kind of went down that road too, and I realized, you know what, this is not where I want to spend my time.
Well, I bet you even within your niche, you get opportunities that pop up that might veer you off path a little bit. And there's how do you stay on track? I mean, you're obviously onto something and it's growing rapidly. You've been doing it long enough now to where you got your flow. How do you avoid the outside shiny object syndrome things that pop up so you can stay on
Well,
track?
I'm just started to become real focused on what I want to do, and I've found an outcome. I've said, this is what I want to do over the next year. This is what I want to do over the next 5 years,
Set
and
a
this is how I
target.
want to do it. Yeah, and I just set a target, and the more fixed you can get on your target, especially if you know what you want to do, then it gets a lot easier, and the distractions don't come as easy. So
I like that because I think a lot of entrepreneurs, especially in the beginning, they start a business just because the opportunity comes up. They may not even realize it's a business yet. It's just something that they're doing to make money, like you were. And they they just kind of do it to the point where, it gradually grows into something, but they go, "Yeah, I'm just going to do this and see how far I can take it." But once they figure out where they want to go with it, it changes everything,
yeah,
because you're able to get clear on the steps that you need to take. It's kind of like, you know, hopping on the road, but without a destination. You're just going to kind of drive aimlessly and you're going to get distracted a lot. You're going to go a lot of different roads that maybe you shouldn't. But when you put that address in the GPS, you
hmm
really know the turn by turn, or at least it becomes more clear. And I think that's important.
yeah,
Mapping out where you want to go and knowing where you want to go. Sometimes in the
yeah,
beginning, you just don't, because you're just figuring out what you're doing, let alone,
yeah.
having the vision. But once you've got something going, knowing where you're going is valuable. It's very
Yeah. Well,
valuable.
you can't hit a target you can't see.
Exactly.
So
Actually, it's interesting. You didn't see the target, but you were hitting it because people kept coming to you.
yeah.
And that's
Well,
interesting.
yeah, and that was at that point. I was pretty unsure, but it didn't take me long to realize that this is what I want to do. And then as I started growing into it, now I I have an end game. I don't want to do this forever.
Sure.
In the process of building storage, I'm building people. I want to
Love that.
help. I want to help people. I want to show people that. So with storage, I want to show people that you don't have to do things the conventional way. There's a whole different way of doing business. You have a group of people out here that have money that want to invest in short term, and you have banks over here that will loan on this for 30-year notes or 20 or 30-year notes. And putting these pieces together where you can get this money up front on the front end, high interest money, and then turn around and cash it out on the back, that's huge. And it's such a great tool to leverage money with. and still have passive income. You can leverage millions of dollars and put that stuff in your pocket, or use it for something else and have it setting and as passive income on long term.
Let's dive into that a little bit. So you kind of gave me the scoop a little bit last time we talked, but you've got people who have land, you've got people who have money. Talk about how that works in simple terms.
So there's a lot of people out there that want to invest money. I know people that's what they want to do. They want to invest money at high interest. They either have like self-directed IRAs, or they have some type of whole life insurance where they can pull that money out. It's still making them money, but then they can loan that for like a year. And usually a 1 year, if it's done right, a 1 year from groundbreaking to going to the bank with a deal, it's pretty easy process, where these people are loaning this money at 25-30% for 1 year, and they're willing to negotiate terms. That's the nice thing. You can't get like those kind of negotiated terms with banks or anything. But if you go to a private money lender that's willing to do this for whatever terms, and then build the project, and usually it's from the time that you put your down payment on the buildings, doing the groundwork and everything, you can have buildings done in 6 months, and that's being kind of a little bit conservative. Building this facility in 6 months, and then you take the other 6 months, you start putting people in there, and then you track the data, and now you have something that's cost you $1 million to build it, but now it's cash flowing $40,000 a month. And you can take that back to the bank and be like, hey, this is my asset. They don't value it as they would before, when you're trying to get money to do it. Now you've got this cash flowing asset that's already done. And then you go to the bank and you pull, $2 or $3 million out of it. You pay your hard money back, and you pocket some money, and you put it on a note, and it's still going to bring you in the passive income.
So you basically line up an investor, line up the landowner. Investor finances up front the construction, and as soon as the construction is completed, lease up happens. Once it's stabilized, has enough occupancy, you go to the bank and say, hey, I want a permanent loan on this now.
Yeah.
Refinance me, take that cash, return the money to the investor plus their return. Now you've got a really solid cash flowing property, maybe finish the lease up depending on where you got that money back.
Yep.
And now you've got a long-term note on that produces cash flow, and you didn't have to put up the money yourself. I like that.
Yeah. And if you have land, that's already, that's like 90% of the battle is finding the right piece of land.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, with the land, you can use that as collateral from a financing standpoint too. So you may not need to go and be fully leased up when you go to the bank. You just have to show a track record of lease up, and they can see the value of the land. They can see the value of the infrastructure that you've put in place, and they can see the business plan and that it's working.
Yeah.
And they'll finance in advance.
Well, and there's other factors that you can contribute to as to what other facilities are doing around there, the demand, how fast they got full. And a lot of times we put in a facility, and there's a facility down the road where there's no open doors. They got 200 doors, and they're full, and they got a waiting list. So like having all of that information too, is just collecting the data. It's a data game. And if you can collect that data and you have the right stuff, then it's an easy deal.
Got it. Hey guys, if you are in commercial real estate of any type, specifically mobile home parks, RV parks, self-storage, or light industrial, and you're looking for a JV partner, someone to come in, bring additional capital, and help you scale your portfolio by professionalizing your operations and things like that, Equity Growth, my company, is looking to build out additional JV partnerships with professional operators with 5 or more assets, and that want to take their portfolio to 100 million or more. So if that's you, go to equitygrowth.net. Again, that's equitygrowth.net. And let's see if we can put something together. So Damon, What is the biggest lesson that you've got from all of this? I mean, you've obviously had some craziness in the past. Now you've got a ton of stability, ton of growth, clear trajectory for what you're going for. If you could talk to that person that's maybe at the point where they've gotten out of whatever mess that they were in, if that was the case and they're just at a stable job but they're not where they want to be, what's that tip that you would give them to make the transition into being their own boss, being an entrepreneur or whatever?
I guess I would say, what identity have you given yourself? What label have you put on yourself? Or what label has society put on you? And really taking a look at that and deciding if that is that who you want to be anymore, because you don't have to be that. You can be whoever you want to be. And that was probably the biggest thing for me, is like, I can be whoever I want to be and I can do whatever I want to do. I don't care what I've done in the past. All of my debt to society is paid, and now all I can do is go up. And I'm going to have some hurdles along the way. There's going to be some setbacks. I'm going to take some loss, but as long as I don't go back to doing what I did before, to what I knew was comfortable, keep pushing forward, because discipline is only a discipline for a while, then it becomes a habit.
Yes. You
So,
stay disciplined for long enough, it becomes you, right? I mean, it
yeah.
just becomes naturally the way you act. Yeah, I like that about the labels because I think we all do that. I mean, for me, when I was early on in business, I was young. Everybody looked at me like, he's just some young kid. He doesn't know what the heck he's doing. And I absorbed that a little bit. Like I took that to where I felt like when I'd go into meetings and stuff, I'd have to kind of justify why I was qualified
Mm-hmm.
by bringing up the age thing. And it's like, I was accepting their label of me,
Yeah.
and it actually reflected poorly because then that would actually, you know, cause them to think more about it than maybe they would have if I would have gotten rid of that label.
Yeah.
Or, I didn't go to college. And
Yeah.
so for me, when I would go into business ventures, be like, hey, I never went to college, but this blah, blah, blah. And I'd have to kind of like justify
Yes.
why I was qualified, but they weren't even asking me about my college
Yeah.
education. It was in my head
Mm-hmm.
that I was a high school basically graduate, but barely a graduate. And it was something that I put on myself. And so I
Yeah.
finally shed all that. I was like, you know what? No, I'm a successful entrepreneur. I'm going to build this thing. Screw you guys. If you think I'm not
Yeah.
qualified, I'm going to do it anyways. And I
That's
just
right.
dropped all that. And that's kind of what you're talking about,
Yeah.
right?
Because I never even, I went to 1 year of high school, my
Jeez,
ninth grade year. I
you
didn't
beat
even
me.
finish. I didn't even. Yeah, I didn't even finish my 10th grade year. Like, I quit a year before I quit. Actually, I got my GED a year before my class graduated. So I was done with school, out. Never.
Early graduate.
Yeah, yeah. I was an early graduate, and then found myself in prison. So that was my life, and now, like, I don't, that's not me at all anymore. Like, I am, but for years I carried that. Yeah, I even when I started getting into groups and becoming more like entrepreneur mindset and doing things, going to these groups, I still questioned my validity. And just like you said, I had to justify why I was there,
Yeah.
and now I don't have to do that anymore, because I know the value that I have, and I know that, like, I've overcame all of this, and I look at what I've done over the last few years, and
Let me
like, I
give
don't.
you another example of that I went through because I think that's a really valuable lesson for people to learn. Started a business right out of high school, did well, did very well. That company filed bankruptcy, wiped me out financially. I went through a lot of financial problems and, you know, literally hit rock bottom financially. And I was I was sensitive to that. I never really talked about it. I was always like worried whether I'd be able to get bank debt or if I'd be able to do, a lot of these other things in business that I previously could. And I wouldn't talk about it. But over time, I went, you know what? There's a lot of other people that have hit, this is obviously as I kind of grew out of that and had some success. I realized there was a lot of other people that were probably held back. I'd actually talked to some people that had financial struggles many years before, like 10, 15 years before, and they were still like afraid to go get a bank loan. They were afraid to go, start a business, whatever, because they were still thinking that they couldn't. And I
Mhm.
realized, you know what? I can help people by talking about the
Yeah.
failure that I had and how I got out of it to help build them up to build confidence. And it's actually helped me as well, being able to talk about it. And I think it helps others too. So, we go through struggles, but those struggles can then become our victory story,
Yeah.
which then empowers other people to have their own victory stories. And I
Yeah.
think that's powerful.
I had this kind of the same situation where I was afraid to talk about it for a while because
I was
I
embarrassed.
felt shit. Yeah, I was embarrassed. I invested $1.3 million into some oil deals, and people told me not to, and I didn't listen. I did my own thing. I went on. I kept investing. I kept pouring money into this thing, $1.3 million, and then one day I get a call from the FBI that says everybody's banks are seized, everybody's under investigation. I hadn't done anything wrong. I'd gotten taken, and I
Jeez.
I lost $800,000, and
Oh,
uh, luckily, the investigation was done. There's two guys that are, one guy's probably going to spend the rest of his life in prison. The other guy's gets to spend several years in prison while his family grows up. But for me, when that happened, I didn't want to talk about it. I was afraid. I was ashamed. I'm like, man, I should have listened. I made this mistake. I I felt like a failure in so many different ways. But as I started talking about that, I started realizing that so many other people out there, entrepreneurs that have done the same thing. Like every successful person that I know that's like multimillionaires, like, oh yeah, I lost millions on this deal. I couldn't sleep for weeks. I drug my family through the dirt. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I'm here now. And so everybody goes through it. And I guess I had to hear the same thing. It took people talking about their failures and their loss. And I'm like,
yeah.
okay, I guess $1 million wasn't that bad for me because I just watched this guy lost $300 million, and now and went from driving a Lambo and living in his big houses to renting an apartment with his family. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's not that bad. It's part of the game. It's part of the
Actually,
process.
it's interesting because in business owners think that in business, you have to always win. All right. Especially when you're new in business. Like you just look around and you're like, man, people are successful. They always win. Right.
Yeah.
But when you actually step back and look, the only people who criticize entrepreneurs for failing are people who've never been an entrepreneur before.
All
Right.
right.
I respect someone and I actually want to do business with people who have failed before much more than someone who's new in business that's never failed. I would much rather work with the person who built a business failed, filed bankruptcy, had to start all over again than the guy who's been in business for 2 years that has never really went through any struggles, because you don't know if
Right.
that person can handle it or not. You don't know how they're going to
Eh,
react in bad
Yeah.
times.
And
And
what's their character going to be like?
you have no clue, and you have no clue whether they're going to be able to bounce back or not. So I actually would rather work with people who've been through some stuff because they learned from it. Do you know how
Yeah.
much I learned from that financial failure of
Mm-hmm.
mine? It was
Yeah.
like I learned the law, I learned about collections,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
learned a lot of bad things, but it helped me become a much more conservative business owner and investor today because I went through that. And so
Yeah.
it's kind of like success through fire, right? And I don't know the right term for that, but I'm trying to think of the phrase, but it's basically success through fire, right? You go through the flame, you come out much stronger and
Mm-hmm.
sharper, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, no, that's good. I'd like to wrap up here pretty
Yeah.
quick, but I want you to talk about where is Damon going? Like, where's the future of Damon's business? And maybe give us kind of some vision.
I have quite a few projects coming up. Look like I'm booking stuff up through next year, or we're going to do some filming and eventually I'd either like to sell my business or have put one or two guys in position that could run it to where I don't really have to be there. But I'm also speaking on stages to different events and just giving those people the hoping to give them the mindset that they can do whatever they want. I'm speaking in prisons. That's kind of where what's that?
That's awesome.
Yeah. Because I know a lot of those guys in there that are, they made some mistakes. There's a lot of guys that have drug problems and guys that are on their way out, that are trying to learn a skilled trade, that don't know how to start a business and do that. And I want to help those people. I want to show them that, you can shed that identity. You can leave that in there when you leave, when you walk out the door and start your own business and become successful and do whatever you want. So I'm looking to help those kind of people, but I also, now the groups that I'm in, I see a lot of high level people that are really successful in certain areas that have a whole lot of stuff down here that they haven't worked on.
Yeah.
And I'd like to help those people maybe break through some of those different mindsets, overcome some of that childhood trauma that they don't even know is there.
You worked through quite a bit of that. You'd said before to me, you said that you did kind of that, what you call it, deep work.
Oh yeah, it's just been years of that. And I think through all of the treatment centers and institutions, jails, whatever, like all of those, every time you're in one of those, you have all these required things that you have to go to, classes and therapy and that. So I've had years and years and years of therapy.
You're a psychologist at this point.
Yeah. And so I never really took it. Like I knew this stuff, but I never really applied it. And I always looked at other people. I could see that stuff in other people. But then I started realizing, what I'm seeing in other people is probably a reflection of what's going on in myself. So I started really taking a deep look into that. And a lot of it, that stuff is between me and my wife. And she's really good at pointing that stuff out to me and bringing me my stuff. And because we went through treatment together, we were there, and we like have the same, type of psychology background, and we're like constantly checking each other. But I want to be able to take all of what I've learned and be able to help other people like overcome those things and redefine who they are, rewrite their story, drop that ego, drop the label that they've carried around for themselves. So that's kind of the goal that I'm in my life, is to try to go out and help other people. I'm looking to try to get on as many stages as I can over the next few years, and eventually do some other kind of investing and in storage, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Who should get a hold of you, and how can they get a hold of you, Damon?
So anybody that's looking to start and scale a business, that's maybe coming out of some kind of trouble or 9-to-5 job, I have a lot of good information for those kind of people. But people that are looking to get into storage, that don't know how to start and don't know how to put all the pieces together to build storage and own their own storage facilities, I could help people with that. And tax liens, real estate. So I have a background in tax liens and real estate too. So
how do they get a hold of you?
I have a website. It's damonnichols.com. I also you can get a hold of
show notes too.
Yeah, Instagram, Damon R. Nichols, and Facebook. I have a LinkedIn. I'm not real active on LinkedIn. I have a YouTube channel. So it's Damon Nichols Breakout Blueprint.
Love it. Thank you for doing this. I appreciate it. You're encouraging and inspiring to many, and I'm looking forward to seeing that journey just continue to boom for you, man. I'm rooting for you, and I can't wait to do more with you. Thanks again.
All right. Thanks for having me, man.
Thanks for listening. I hope you got out of this as much as I did. I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a 5-star review so we can reach more people. Jump over to mariodattilo.net and find out what else I got going on. Be sure to connect with me on all the socials, and I'll see you on next week's show.